Hello, friend, and welcome back to my channel. All right, I always have a question for you. Have you ever cleaned your house just because you knew company was about to come? I mean, like where you had to make a mad dash and you grabbed things and you threw them in the closet. Or I'll confess about myself, there were things on the couch and I grabbed them and threw them in the laundry room on top of the washer and closed the door just to make it look right because the people were on their way in. It was that sort of situation that on the outside looks spotless, but you don't dare open the door. Everything is what my friends and I call magazine ready. And I know we do that, right? We clean what people can see on the outside and we hide the rest. And sometimes we carry that same mindset in our spiritual lives. We show up at church, we raise our hands, we know what to say, we know what to do and when to do it, but beneath the surface, there is this mess that we haven't really dealt with. And here's the thing. God is not fooled by good attendance. He's not fooled by spiritual language or things that look super spiritual. What he really wants is alignment. He wants our lives to match our worship. And this week's lesson is going to be a heart check for us in that way. It's not about shame. It is about truth. It is about mercy. It's about change. And God wants us to know he's not just after what we do in sacred spaces. He's after how we live every single day. So stay with me because we're going to get into a great lesson here. I want you to grab everything that you normally use to study, your Bibles, your journals, your pens, your handy dandy notebooks. It's time for us to get into this lesson. Hello to every one of you. Hello, TSSG family. Hello, TSSG family. You're in the TSSG space. Well, hello, TSSG family. Sunday school.
Changing the way you see Sunday school with that Sunday school girl.
Well, again, hello, TSSG family, and welcome to the Team COGIC lesson review for this Sunday, which is August the 10th. My name is Waynell. You're in the TSSG space, and here I share Christian content that is largely inspired by and or based on our Sunday school lessons. I do serve Team COGIC, and I serve the international family. And I'm glad to be on. I know this is a surprise, kind of short notice for some of y'all, because I'm going live at 6 o'clock for my international lesson. And then I was like, but I'm ready. I'm ready now. So I'm going to just flip the button. And I'm glad for those of you who are able to hop on. And hello to everyone else who's going to catch the replay. If you're a newbie here, I want to say welcome to you. You've just joined this incredible group of people who love God, love his word. We study his word together each week through this mechanism called Sunday school, not because we don't have anything else to do on Sunday mornings at 9:30, but we literally want to be better disciples, better representatives of Christ, and his word is what helps us to do that. So you found your tribe now. Please make sure that you have hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell, so that like Sister Starlo Howard, you will know when we go live on this channel, and like Shelton Williams, Antoinette Richardson, Charles Robinson, and Patricia Harris, you'll be able to click on, I don't want you to miss any of the content. And while you're here, everybody do me a favor, please click that thumbs up like button. Again, these videos don't cost you a thing, but they definitely, those thumbs up likes encourage me. Let me know that we're doing a good job, that we are meeting your needs in this space, but it also it trains your YouTube. It curates your experience here in YouTube land. So before I get started, I want to remind you all that I am on my way this weekend to the city of Chicago, Illinois, with the one, the only Pastor Rodney Jones. I'll be at the New Nation Anointed Ministries Church of God in Christ for the Sunday School Conference. And I am so super excited. I know you've been hearing me talk about it. You've heard Pastor Jones talk about it, and it is happening. So if you're in the area, we would love to see you. I've gotten notes from so many of you who have said I'm going to be there, and I am so excited to see you. If we've not met before, to meet you. I'm here for all of the hugs, the high fives, the handshakes, and the selfies. So I can't wait. But more importantly, I'm excited about the deposit that will be made as you seek to do ministry in a better way, in a more effective way in the places that you are. So please meet us there. The screen also has the QR code. If you're not able to be there in person, but you'd like to be there, virtually. You can scan the QR code and you are going to be able to join virtually as well. So look forward to seeing you there. Pastor Jones is such a giving and a generous person. And I say often in this space that we're not out here competing. We come together. And he often pops in the lives, and I do the same to him. I cut up a little bit in his lives. It's just what we do to each other and with each other. So that said, he was with us on Markup Monday. And he said, I am going to give away 5 of your books. I can't believe I took the book off my desk again, but here it is. He's going to give away 5 of my Equipped for Purpose books. So if you are interested in being a part of the drawing for one of these 5 books to be given away, you're going to have to take some steps to enter. If you will email me, here's the information on the screen. Email me at thatsundayschoolgirl@gmail.com, and you've got to include 2 things in your email. Number 1, I want to know, what do you enjoy about TSSG? What do you like about this ministry? And then secondly, tell me something that I can do better, or something that you would love to see that will help you. I want to keep things great, new, fresh around here. And this ministry is no good if it's not meeting your needs. So thank you so much, Pastor Jones, for sponsoring this giveaway. I am still in birthday mode, y'all, and the wonderful gifts are still coming my way. So this is a gift that I'm able to give to you because of Pastor Jones. So please don't forget to email if you're interested in entering. Let's prepare to get into our lesson this week. Our lesson is entitled, A Chance to Be Just. A Chance to Be Just. We're going to Jeremiah chapter 7, verses 1 through 15. And hello, Sai Pal. I'm glad that you're here. Thank you so much. We are going to be looking at verses 1 through 15, our Bible truth. Through Ezra and Jeremiah, God sent messages of hope to those who will amend their ways, and messages of doom to those who will not. Our memory verse is going to be verse 3, and the aims of our lesson are that we're going to review these messages of doom and hope that are found in this lesson text, regret the error of our ways when we haven't done things the right way, and not just feel bad about it, but make a commitment to change, resolve to change, and lastly, address our personal unfaithfulness and other community corruption. All right, let's prepare. We're going to pray and prepare to go in and read our text together. Gracious Father, thank you so much for who you are and your love and your kindness and the ways that you care for us each day. Thank you so much for your consistency, your faithfulness. Sometimes even when we haven't been so faithful, God, it is our prayer today that as we dive into this lesson, you will open our hearts, our minds, our understanding, turn the mirror on us, cause us not to simply be storytellers, but literally to take your word, soak in your word, and to find out what this word provokes us to do in 2025, how we are to be different, what the ways that you'll challenge us in our personal spaces, and the ways that we show up as people who say that we represent you. God, I pray that you'll bless those who are present now and those who will catch the replay. We love you. We give you glory. In Jesus' name, amen. Jeremiah chapter 7, beginning at verse 1. Hello, Asa Sims. I see you there. The word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, stand in the gates of the Lord's house and proclaim there this word, and say, hear the word of the Lord, all ye of Judah, that enter in at these gates to worship the Lord. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, amend your ways and your doings, and I will cause you to dwell in this place. Trust ye not in lying words, saying, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord are these. For if ye thoroughly amend your ways and your doings, ye thoroughly execute judgment between a man and his neighbor. If ye oppress not the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, and shed not innocent blood in this place, neither walk after other gods to your hurt, then I will cause you to dwell in this place, in the land that I gave to your fathers forever and ever. Behold, ye trust in lying words that cannot profit. Will ye steal, murder, and commit adultery, and swear falsely, and burn incense unto Baal, and walk after other gods whom ye know not, and come and stand before me in this house, which is called by my name, and say, we are delivered to do all these abominations? Is this the house which is called by my name become a den of robbers in your eyes? Behold, even I have seen it, saith the Lord. But go ye now unto my place, which was in Shiloh, where I set my name at first, and see what I did for the wickedness of my people Israel. And now, because ye have done all these works, saith the Lord, and I spake unto you, rising up early and speaking, but ye heard not. And I called you, but ye answered not. Therefore will I do unto this house, which is called by my name, wherein ye trust, and unto this place which I gave you and to your fathers, as I have done to Shiloh. And I will cast you out of my sight, as I have cast out all your brethren, even the whole seed of Ephraim. This is our reading for this week as we pursue this conversation of a chance to be just, a chance to be just. We're in the Old Testament once again in the book of Isaiah. We're in the book of prophets. This is a major prophet, the book written by the prophet. Did I say Isaiah? Jeremiah. It's Jeremiah. We're in the book of Jeremiah, the prophet, the major prophet Jeremiah. And some portions of the book of Jeremiah, although it is credited to Jeremiah as its writer, there are some portions that scholars believe may have been compiled by his scribe. But he served in a really, what I consider, critical part of Israel's history. This is right before the fall of Jerusalem to Babylon. So when you look at his ministry, it spans over 40 years, covering the reigns of King Josiah, King Jehoiakim, and King Zedekiah. So this is not an easy assignment that Jeremiah has. He was called as a young man, and we know him as the weeping prophet because there was a lot. The message that he gave was heavy, and a lot of it had to do with the emotional, like the toil of delivering such a hard message to people who, quite frankly, refused to listen. Like, God is sending his word through his prophet, but the people were so hard in their hearts. And God gave him this deeply, like, personal and public mission to warn Judah that judgment was coming. And it was coming if they didn't do their part, which was to amend. We're going to see that in the text, or to change their way. So his message is, deeply spiritual. It is a message that is so aware of what was going on in society. And in every single way, it was a message of no compromise. By the way, if you need the TSSG notes for this lesson, they've been posted for a few days. You can get the TSSG notes. They're the 20 questions that go along with the lesson. So if you are looking to challenge your ways that you relate to the word, past just telling me what the lesson says, and think about it kind of introspectively, the questions are great. If you're a teacher, use them, cut them up in strips, ask your class, get them paired, let them talk in class. And then if you teach young people, there is a kid pack that is written for their level that allows them to reflect, to have writing assignments, to have games associated with it. They're all available on the website. They're also linked in the description box for this lesson. Thank you so much. Hello, Sister Angela. Good afternoon to you. So Jeremiah's message was not just for Judah. Like, when we look at it, and y'all know I'm going to pull out a lot of life application because I think his message still speaks to us today. And it reminds us that religion without righteousness is really just a bunch of emptiness, right? Because real relationship with God is not just that we show up on Sunday mornings. Real relationship with God is how we live every single day, and not just when we are in the spaces, the sacred spaces of worship. Let's take a look at our cast of characters. We've got Jeremiah, the prophet that I've already told you, who has this really heavy message, who's got to stand in the temple gate and deliver a hard truth to people. His assignment is going to be bold. It's going to be public, calling out injustice, calling out false worship, and this need for them to truly change. There are the people of Judah. We'll talk about them more in just a moment. The ones who are showing up at the temple, going through the motions, look like they're doing the right things, but their lives don't at all reflect the covenant that they claim to have with God. And so God has to call out their bad behavior for trusting in rituals instead of righteousness. There are religious leaders, and they are not specifically named in our printed text, but they are definitely implied because they are the ones who had a responsibility, and they have allowed this corruption to creep in and this empty worship to thrive in their sacred spaces, which really give the people this false sense of spiritual safety. And then, of course, there's God. I probably should have called him first, but he's the one downloading the message to Jeremiah. God is direct. I feel like God is emotional in what he communicates, but he's also really just, right? He's not silent about sin. He is also, that when you look at him, he's not a God who is without mercy. So even though the folks haven't done what they're supposed to do, I think this message really shows us a lot about the heart of God, in that he does not, his default, we've been talking about this, his default is not punishment. His default is not coming at people over your, coming down on your head. His default is love, right? And inside of that, he wants his people to turn. But at the same time, he's not going to ignore bad behavior and disobedience. You can go ahead and warm your fingers up and put that in the chat. He is not. God is not ignoring disobedience. He is not going to ignore disobedience. And then there's Shiloh. Of course, Shiloh's not a person, but we do get the name called as a point of reference, as the example that God uses to remind the people of what happens when his presence is taken for granted, right? Shiloh was once a sacred place, but because of disobedience, it was destroyed. So let's keep moving on. Y'all know I like to pause and look at the people a little bit, because I'm not a storyteller as a Sunday schooler or a Sunday school teacher just so that you can go tell me what happens in Jeremiah chapter 7. I want you to relate to these people. These are God's chosen people. This is Judah, God's chosen people, and they are showing up at the temple like it's all good. Like, just as a standard course of practice, it's all good with me and God. Me and God are locked in. And essentially, they are like the churchgoers of their day. So they're familiar with the law. They know the stories. They can quote the word. They know where to be. They know what the day of worship is. But they've gotten real comfortable with bad behavior. They've gotten really comfortable with behaving another way outside of their worship practice. And that's exactly what Jeremiah is confronting. So when you look at what their issues are, it is just that, the going through the motions without a real change of heart. God is not looking for performance-based things. He's looking for a change of heart. And they go to the temple basically treating it like it is a spiritual lucky charm, as if showing up is all they need to do to cover up the mess that they did the other 6 days of the week. All right. Their community was full of injustice, idol worship, dishonesty, and they have somehow convinced themselves that God is okay with this. They stopped listening. They've stopped listening to God. They've stopped listening to the prophets. Quite frankly, they've stopped listening to the truth. And so they have put their trust now in the ritual of worship and not in what should be true repentance. So how are they like us today? What does that look like today? Same thing. It looks like people who show up to church, who serve in ministry, who check off all the I'm a good Christian boxes, and yet still carry unforgiveness, who still gossip, who walk in levels of pride. It is like when we learn to lean on our religious habits to make us feel better instead of actually changing how we live. It's assuming that God's presence equals God's approval. And we're going to see that is not the case. He's really watching for obedience. He is really watching for compassion. He is watching for humility, and those things should show up in us as believers. And we don't always connect our personal choices to how it impacts the community around us, but it is so true that what we tolerate in private can slowly begin to affect our entire church community. It can affect our families. It can affect our city, our community. What we tolerate in private, I think, becomes so important. So, we've got to be careful that we are not like Judah, in that we become so desensitized where we hear the word, like we know the word, we can tell you Bible stories, but we're no longer moved by the word. So let's get into our text for this week a little deeper. By the time we get to chapter 7 of Jeremiah, again, things have really been going sideways for the people of Judah. We're not at the beginning of their decline. This is more like the part where the warning light has been on for a little while, but the engine is now knocking. Y'all know what it's like to have a check engine light. Let me just be honest. I have a check engine light on right now. And it hurt my heart last week. I took my car in. I took it in as a matter of course to get that inspection done in the state of Texas. And the man was so nice to me, brought me bottled water, chit-chatted with me. And in the end, he brought me a paper that said fail. And it failed because the check engine light is on. So, we're going to get that taken care of. And I've been told it could be as simple as a loose gas cap. At the same time, we're going to do something called, I think it's a smoke test. So you got to kind of figure out like why the check engine light is on and not wait until the engine starts knocking. And up to this point, God has been patient. I'm with you, Sister Richardson. This lesson it will speak to every single one of us. You're absolutely right. God has been patient, but now he is sending Jeremiah with this bold public message. And he's going to tell him exactly where to deliver it. We'll see that in just a moment. Jeremiah has been warning the people for years. Go back and look at chapter 2. God has laid out his case already. I brought you into a plentiful country and you defiled my land. So the people have abandoned God. They abandoned God when they did what? When they chased after idols, when they forgot about the covenant, the agreement between them and God. They forgot what that was supposed to look like. Right? He's going to be their God. They're going to be his people, but they got to do their part. That's where that whole obedience thing comes in. And instead of, the gratitude that they should have had and the obedience that they should have shown, they have turned to pride and rebellion. And the most dangerous part is they think they are still all good with God. Like that is the scary part. So when we get to Jeremiah chapter 3, there is language like return, oh sliding children. Right? That's chapter 3, verse 14. And it shows us just how far they have drifted. And that's the thing about a drift, right? If you watch the waves in the ocean, they look really beautiful. Quite frankly, they're intoxicating. I love the beach. They're intoxicating. But you watch after a while and that drift will have you way out there. And the people were at the point of no return. They just kept drifting. They kept going. And in chapter 5, God says, they have lied about the Lord. They have lied about the Lord. That's what the prophet says. They've lied about the Lord. They said he'll do nothing. That's what the prophet says. They lied about the Lord. They said he'll do nothing. He's not going to harm us. Nope. So their mindset was clear. They've already fixed in their minds, we can do what we want to do because God is not actually going to judge us, right? So there is sort of this spiritual ignorance in my mind that becomes really the core of what their issue is. So when we get to chapter 6, which is right before our printed text, there's kind of this buildup that happens from the least of them, even unto the greatest, everyone is given to covetousness. They have healed the hurt of the daughter of my people slightly, saying, peace, peace, when there is no peace. In other words, they are pretending like everything is fine. Peace, peace, when there is no peace. Leaders are pretending, the prophets, the people included. Everybody is saying like it's all good, but God knows it is not good. And they've built this religious system that looks good on the outside, but it's their hearts that are the problem. Their hearts are far from God. So by the time we get here to Jeremiah chapter 7, God has had enough, right? He's got enough of this fake worship, enough of these spiritual performances. Now it is time to call out these people and expose that disconnect between their worship and their lifestyle. Somebody drop in the chat that there's got to be a connection between my worship and my lifestyle. In fact, I'll tell you this, worship starts at the door, not at the altar. Yep, you can put that one in the chat. Worship starts at the door and not at the altar because God is watching how we walk in and not just how we lift up our hands. I'm getting ready to prove it to you. This passage opens with this really bold moment, right? It's a really bold moment because God has given Jeremiah clear instructions. He didn't just tell him what to say. He told him where he was going to say it and who he was going to say it to. So notice that Jeremiah is not behind a pulpit in a quiet sanctuary. He's not even in a loud COGIC sanctuary with the musician bumping him on in while he changes keys 4 times. Nope. He is not tucked away in a corner. He's not in his journal writing quiet notes. He is standing at the gate of the temple, right where the people are walking into worship. Everybody's got to pass by. And this is like where spiritual routine collides with what I consider to be a divine confrontation. The temple gate is a busy place, right? It's alive with priests, worshipers, the religious sound bites, just kind of that normal stuff. Think about us going into our regular places of worship. Think about the red carpet in St. Louis. Yeah, we're going back. Think about the red carpet, right? It is where, like, consider like the foyer or the foyer of churchgoers in that day. But that is exactly where God interrupted the flow. He interrupted the routine, because this moment wasn't just about what was happening on the inside of the temple. He's dealing with the heart posture of the people who are coming through the door. As they come through the door, he's dealing with their hearts. And that posture at this point in the story is dangerously off. These people are dangerously off. They are showing off with their custom clothes. They're showing off with their robes. They're showing off with their offerings. They're coming with their offerings in hand, with prayer on their lips. And the temple, listen, I've been in church all year long. I haven't missed a single Sunday. I got good attendance. They're showing up with all of that. But their daily lives don't line up with their declarations. And God sees all of that. In fact, he sees through it. He sees that their faith has become performative, right? And their covenant identity has become a cultural thing, but it's not spiritual. That's why, you hear me say it, but like sometimes I kind of pause there. I'm definitely proud to be Church of God in Christ. And I tell people, I am 5th generation in this church. But I want to be so careful that my identity with God doesn't become a cultural thing because I'm a COGIC girl and miss the spiritual connection, right? So these folks are going through all the motions and they're missing something. And that's why God sends Jeremiah with this really piercing word. Hear the word of the Lord. In other words, y'all need to pay attention. In fact, in the Hebrew, the word means to listen with intent, to obey. Don't just listen like because you hear and perceive with your ears, but listen because you're going to do better. You're going to be better. He is truly calling them to not only hear, but to respond. And then he gives them a charge, right? Amend your ways and your doings. Amend. When we look at that in the original language, it means like there's this idea that there's something off, right? There's something off. And so we've got to now make it right. Amend means we've got to make it whole. Amend means we got to put it back in order. So this is not just like minor adjustments. This is God who is calling his people to real change, not just on the surface, but at their core, right? Amend their ways means amend the patterns, the directions in which you've been doing life. Amend your decisions. Amend how you're behaving behind the scenes. We don't care what you look like when you're in the pulpit with the microphone. We don't care what it's like when you sing in holy thirds. What is it like when you leave this place? And God is addressing this full picture, right? Not just what happens in the worship space, but how they actually live. And this was not a threat. When I look at this lesson, and I said in the intro that I don't feel like God is beating people over the heads necessarily. I feel like, it's an opportunity. We look at the lesson title. It is a chance for them. It is another chance for them to be just. It is what my grandfather called another chance to get it right. Right. So it tells us that God hasn't closed the door on them. Like their opportunity is to return to him with sincerity, but God has not closed the door on any of his people. He's, simply refusing to bless their empty worship at this point. He's simply refusing to continue to honor an unrepentant heart. But his mercy has not been taken off the table. But at the same time, we've got to know that God's benefits, his blessings come with expectation. Go ahead and drop that in the chat. God's blessings come with expectation. His benefits come with expectation. So notice in this text how God even introduces himself. The Lord, capital L, the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel. So that's not going to be a soft title. Like it is this reminder of the power of who he is, of his authority, and even his covenant relationship with him. So again, he's not this passive observer. He is the commander of heaven's armies. Like he is letting them know. And so like they need to remember, like God is like, let me sit this right here and let you remember exactly who you're dealing with, right? And that's what they do. Let's take a moment and pause for, some of my ahas and my applications from this section. First is, and y'all keep hearing this refrain, like, I can't just assume that showing up for worship equals being right with God. Nope, not worship on Sunday morning, not showing up every district meeting. Just came out of Holy Convocation in Kansas East. It was beautiful. Not showing up at AIM, not workers meeting, all the things in November. Random facts, I've never missed the Holy Convocation. And guess what? And I mean the national. I have never missed the national Holy Convocation. Random facts. And guess what? God is not giving me credit for that. Not like that. Like, nice way, now that's good. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't expect me to live right, right? And I can't assume that showing up for worship in any of those spaces equals being right with God. He is literally watching what I bring through the gate. He's watching my mindset. He is watching my motives. He's watching my lifestyle, right? And that matters to me. That's why I'm with you, Sister Patricia Harris. I agree. This lesson is all about, my obedience and what God is requiring of my lifestyle. This passage does make me want to sit and check my patterns. Have I let comfort or tradition replace real conviction? And that's why I called out those things, because we do a lot of things, and I'm not knocking any of it. I am one of you. I really am. But we've got to make sure that that's not what we're leaning on as a lifestyle. All right. God's willingness to warn me is proof that he wants me. I keep telling y'all, it's not his default nature to come over our heads, but God, he loves us. He loves us. And his warnings are about giving us an opportunity to get it right. Let me move a little bit faster. I'm already going to be late to the international lesson. In verses 4-7, we go into this sort of deeper call where God is not just talking about amending their ways, but like the why and the how. Not just an instruction, but why are we amending our ways and how do we do that? And he really makes it clear that their future in the land is tied to their faithfulness. Like, what happens in the future is tied to the decisions that you make right now. And it's not just tied to your identity. It is not just tied to even their attendance of worship. This phrase, I will cause you to dwell in this place, that is more than a physical geography. That is about protection. It's about stability. It's about them having continued access to God's promises. So all of that is about the covenant, but the covenant came with conditions, right? They had to do their part. So, God is exposing this lie that they've allowed themselves to believe. And not only that, but they have repeated it so often that like it's become a chant. The temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. Like, when we see that repetition, we see it 3 times, that isn't for emphasis. It is like, it's kind of those weren't words of worship. They were words being used like a security blanket or like a magic phrase. I'll put it that way, as if the temple's presence was what guaranteed them God's favor, no matter how they lived, right? So again, the language of a thing that sounds like, and it looks like a certain thing, but God is not impressed with it because of how they live. And so the people have been treating the temple like this spiritual safety zone, assuming that as long as they're standing in the temple, as long as they showed up, everything was good. And God is clearly saying to them, like, don't trust in these lying words. Don't trust in this fraudulent speech. Don't trust in these words that are deceptive by nature. So, God gets very specific to tell them now, what does amending look like? Number 1, it looks like thoroughly executing judgment between man and his neighbor. So, not exactly in a technical way, but meaning with fairness, with consistency, with courage, not just about creating a just society where, it's creating a society where truth matters. I'll say it that way. Where disputes are handled with integrity. That's what he means. Oppressing not the stranger, the fatherless, or the widow. Y'all know this is not new language. We have seen this across the prophets, where there were these groups who had no social power, no land, no standing, no voice. And God has always required his people to protect those vulnerable populations. And so, if they ignored this, they are essentially violating the heart of his law. Shed not innocent blood in this place, meaning worship doesn't mean anything if justice is not present. If injustice is running rampant outside of the sanctuary, there's blood on the streets. Like, that essentially nullifies all the hands lifted in praise. If we as a community, as God's people, are not concerned about injustice in our communities, this is essentially saying he's not impressed with our praise breaks and our footwork, right? Because there is, and we talked about this last week, there is a connection between our worship and justice. Neither walking after other gods to your hurt. And they had basically traded loyalty for idols, loyalty to the true and living God to idols. And, these idols were not idols who could save them. They were not idols who could speak. And the people didn't just dishonor God. They were hurting themselves. And that's what he's saying. You didn't just hurt me. Like, this was to your own detriment, right? So when we see this phrase, to your hurt, it implies this self-inflicted damage. It is self-inflicted spiritual sabotage. So God says again to them, if you do this, then you can stay. Then I will allow you to remain in the land that I have promised. So again, this is not about location. It was about their obedience. And we see that God is not playing games with them. He's not impressed with their formality. So, this really tells me that you cannot live reckless and expect righteous results. Yep, go ahead and put that in the chat. You cannot live reckless and expect righteous results, because God blesses alignment and not appearances. God blesses alignment and not appearances. I'm going to keep moving. Y'all see all my key learnings. Y'all listen. I told y'all this was a good lesson. In verses 8 through 11, there is this really sharp turn that moves from invitation to an indictment, because God is no longer calling for change. He's now exposing. He is exposing this pattern of rebellion that has gone unchecked. And he starts with the word behold. And Reverend Nelson told us in Markup Monday, behold, he called that out. And if y'all not on Markup Mondays, what are you doing on Mondays at 6 p.m.? Join us. Behold means that we need to stop and look, pay attention, because in the Hebrew that signals something urgent that is about to come up, and we've got to pay attention, look at what's really happening. And so the people have been putting their trust in lies, right? Not just teachings and empty traditions. These were the lies feel spiritually safe while they were morally corrupt. And we've got to watch stuff in our own lives that make us feel spiritually safe while we are not doing the right things. They had created this belief system that let them sin freely and worship proudly. Yep. They would sin freely and worship proudly. And here's the thing. It is a dangerous thing when you don't feel conviction anymore. They felt no conviction. And in fact, they were even doing it not only with no conviction, but they weren't even being corrected. So that's why I said this lesson was for this message was for the leaders as well, because these priests had allowed it to get to this point. And listen, I'm not a pastor and I'm not here to come down on leadership, but woe unto a leader who is allowing everything in their space and allowing every part of a lifestyle. We are to be holy people. We are to be sanctified. We are to be set apart. I watched a part of a podcast a day or so ago that was even talking about, pastors who go to secular concerts. And I won't call out any particular artist, but woe unto us when we make ourselves just like the world, where there's nothing different. We're not convicted by anything. And then we can't receive correction because the people who should be correcting us are doing the same thing. And so they're doing these things and they believe it's without consequence. And God plainly says to them that these are lies. And these lies are useless. They cannot help you. They do not profit you. And then he names these behaviors, right? What are these behaviors? Stealing, murdering, committing adultery, swearing falsely. All of these are straight violations of the 10 Commandments, right? And God is showing that they're not just a little bit off track. These are covenant breaking left and right. No matter how you dice it up, these are covenant breaking. And yes, Sister Howard, holiness is right. No matter what anybody says, holiness is right. So then we get this turning point in the lesson where he says, and come and stand before me in this house and say, we are delivered to all these abominations. Now that should have shocked your socks off. Like, these people are actually, like, they have convinced themselves that because they belong to God, they were free to live however they wanted. Like that phrase, we are delivered, was their way of saying, we're safe. Like, we good because, God is not going to judge us. In their minds, the covenant have become this license and not a responsibility, right? Woe unto us if we take salvation as a license and not a responsibility. As believers, we walk under the covenant and we too have a responsibility. So, God drops the hammer on them. In this house, this has become a den of robbers in your eyes. Like, is that what's happened here? Like, when you look at the word den here, it's not just about a den of thieves. It's like their hideout, right? He is saying you have allowed his house, the temple, to become your hideout. They weren't just doing wrong. They were using the temple as a place to hide from accountability. They had turned the house of God into a safe space for sin. Y'all, that is dangerous, to turn God's house into a safe space for sin. So the key word here, the key phrase anyway for me, is in your eyes, right? That means in your perspective. From your perspective, everything looks fine. In your view, it's all good. But God reminds them, behold, even I have seen it. In other words, you might fool yourselves, but I see all through it. We had a lesson not too long ago entitled, God is not fooled, right? So again, this is that divine gut check where people were so deep into justifying their own mess, mistaking God's patience for his approval. And now God is saying, I'm not blind. And I'm not even playing along with your mess here. I'm not doing that at all. Later, we know that Jesus actually quotes that. He quotes this same verse in the temple in Matthew chapter 21, when he comes in and finds things in the temple that he's not expecting. So the biggest lie I believe that anyone can walk under is thinking that God's name covers a lifestyle that refuses to surrender. I'm just going to tell you, God's name, you can call it all you want to, but it does not cover a lifestyle that refuses to surrender. Verses 12 through 15. I'm making up time. I'm getting there. Here, God really brings this message to what I consider a sharp conclusion. He does this really by pointing to history as proof. And I told y'all in Markup Monday, I've always been able to watch other people, their patterns, their consequences, and decide if that pattern is what got you there, I don't want any of that. And so God uses history as proof. He tells them now, go to Shiloh, right? This is not a metaphor. It's a real location. It was once this sacred site where the tabernacle stood in the early days of Israel's worship. We find the tabernacle back in 1 Samuel chapters 1 through 4. And Shiloh had been a holy place. It was a holy place until it wasn't, right? And the people's sin and their disregard for God's presence is what led to the destruction. And now it really stood at this as this visual of what happens when privilege is met with disobedience. And so God is saying to them, you think the temple in Jerusalem has made you safe? Let's go on a field trip. Nope, let's go look at what I did at the last place that I put my name. In other words, that should tell us that sacred spaces don't guarantee lasting favor when sin goes unchecked, or unrepentant is a better way to say that. Sacred spaces don't guarantee lasting favor when sin goes unrepentant and when sin goes unchecked. And here he names the root issue. You've done all these works, and I spake unto you rising up early and speaking, but you didn't hear, right? This phrase, rising up early, he's not out here writing poetry. It was a Hebrew saying that basically referred to how persistent God has been. He has been calling them out again and again. He's given them chance after chance, but they've tuned him out, right? And now he is once again, he's reaching for them. He's been reaching for them, but they wouldn't reach back. So this is not just like disobedience. This is deliberate indifference to God. It is deliberate indifference to his voice. And that is what makes the judgment that he talks about in verse 14, so significant. I will do to this house as I have done to Shiloh. God is drawing a line in the sand, right? The trust that they have had in this building, the trust that they have had in their family heritage, the trust that they have had in their national identity, the trust that they have had in their denomination, the trust that they have had in their style of worship, in the clothes that they wear, in the titles, in the positions. It is all meaningless if it wasn't backed by obedience, because that's what the Lord was requiring. And so God then makes it personal. I will cast you out of my sight as I've cast out all your brethren, even the whole seed of Ephraim. Ephraim here was the northern kingdom. And they've already fallen. They've already been taken by the Assyrians at this time. And so, again, it's that whole idea of being able to look at what happened to your brother and saying, maybe I need to get it right because I don't want that to happen. Nope. And Judah had seen what had happened, but instead of learning from their brother, they kept going like judgment could never touch them. Yep. So this passage is not about what God might do. Nope, not just what he might do. It is a reminder of what he's already done, right? And he's already done this to people who, like these people, have refused to listen to him. And so I believe that the lesson really makes it clear for us that, like, God is patient, right? He's loving, he's kind, he's patient, but his patience has limits, right? He will give us chance after chance, but his patience has limits. He'll warn, he will call, he even gives space for people to return. But when the heart stays hard, consequences are what will follow. So, while this message is for Judah in context, I believe that it carries weight for us today because God hasn't forgotten his promises. He's not forgotten any of the promises made toward us. But he also does not ignore our patterns of disobedience. He will not ignore our patterns of rebellion. Why? Because we too have got to be careful about how we treat his sacred spaces, right? And history tells us this, right? God has receipts. God has receipts. If he shut it down before, he can shut it down again. So we cannot ignore his warning. And y'all, I really believe we are seeing that modern day. We have watched over the past several years, leader after leader, ministry after ministry fall because they've gotten too common, too comfortable, and gotten away from the true purpose of what it looks like and means to honor God. God is looking at our lifestyle, both inside and outside, and he's not impressed with us simply showing up. Because once again, the heart work is not all about what happens at the altar, but it even matters how we come in the door as believers, right? I know those who are unrepentant, they've got to come in at the door. But this lesson is telling us that as believers, God is looking at how we show up at the door. So when God's voice is ignored, even places that he blessed at one point in time can fall. Let's wrap this up. This has been an incredible lesson. And again, it has caused me to pause in so many ways. It is easy to look at the people in this passage and, shake our heads. But if we're honest, we are people, right? We are people. So we've got to make sure that we keep an ear to God, to be sensitive to the things when he identifies things in our lives that don't please him. We've got to obey his warnings. We've got to be sure that we don't lose our ability to be convicted by things when they're going wrong. And we've got to be careful that we don't simply check off boxes, but that we are people who walk lives that are lives of change. And here's how I want to do that this week. Number one, stop assuming that you're good with God just because you're present. And I'm like, it doesn't matter to me that you show up every single week. It doesn't matter to me that you serve in ministry every single week. Showing up is not the same as having a surrendered heart. And God requires not just our service. We serve from a place of humility because our hearts are surrendered, but God is not impressed with service where the heart is not surrendered. Secondly, listen with intention and not with assumption. God is not just calling for awareness, right? He's calling for action. God wants us to change. He wants us to be surrendered. He wants us to be submitted. He wants us to be different. Number three, review the receipts. Review the receipts. Look at what's happened in the past when God's people ignored his voice. And know he means what he says. He's not playing. and God means what he says. The fourth thing is identify your hiding places. In this lesson, we looked at people who used God's house as a hiding place. And I'm going to ask you, this lesson is in your face. What spaces are you using to avoid conviction? Are they sacred spaces? Is it going to church? Is it your title? What have you allowed to become a spiritual cover-up for what you are not willing to surrender and get right with God? And lastly, respond before there is removal. When God says amend, that's grace talking. That is a chance to get it right. So our job is to answer before the offer or the opportunity expires. This is our lesson for this week. I promise you there is so much that I couldn't say it all in the TSSG notes. I mean, in the video, but they are definitely in the TSSG notes. I encourage you to download those. Please don't forget, join me in Chicago this weekend for the Sunday School Conference with Pastor Jones. And if you are interested in entering the drawing, the giveaway, the gift away for one of the 5 books, you need to email me with these 2 bits of information. What do you enjoy about TSSG? What would you like to see different? Or what can I do better in this space? I love you all so much. I do. I appreciate the opportunity to serve you. Thank you for 10 incredible years in this space. I appreciate you for choosing week after week to study with me in this space. I love you so much. And I'll see you in Sunday school. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for studying with me this week. I want to remind you of my ask, please, that you support me with the gift of $9. And if you've never done so before, tip over to my Etsy store. If you're looking for great gifts for Sunday school students, or maybe a student who wants to celebrate your teacher, superintendent who wants gifts, go and check out the Etsy store. There are t-shirts, tote bags, candles, pouches, you name it, all celebrating Sunday school. So there are at least 8 different designs for both Sunday school and church school. So check them out. And if you've not already done so, check out my book on Amazon. So many of you have ordered it and I've got incredible feedback and I appreciate you so much. I'm excited about this devotional, which says it's for Sunday school teachers, but honestly, it works for anyone serving in any space, ministry or even corporate spaces. So if you're looking for a devotional to encourage you along your way, check it out. Love you and see you all soon.